Good day, ladies and gentlemen. So today I am here to present to you the software testing. I am Mark Anthony Squera, the reporter for today. So without further ado, let's start. Okay. What is a software testing? Technically, software testing is a process used to identify the correctness, completeness, and quality of developed computer software. It includes a set of activity conducted with the intent of finding errors in software so that it could be corrected before the product is released and the end users to the end users. In simple words, software testing is an activity to check that software is a defect free. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Why is it important? Why testing is important? So this one is this is a China airline. Okay, Airbus A300. It crashed during the software bug on April 26, 1994, killing 264 innocent lives. Software bugs potentially cause monetary or even loss of life. As you can see, history is full of such of examples of this. In 1985, in 1985, Kennedy's Terac-25 radiation therapy machine malfunctioned to a software bug and delivered lethal radiation for those 60 patients, leaving three people dead and three people critically injured. Okay. On April 1999, a software bug caused failure to $1.2 military satellite launch. This is considered as the costliest accident in the human history. While on May of 1996, a software bug caused the bank account of 823 customers of major US banks to be credited with 920 million US dollars. So, why why testing is important? Okay, why testing is important? As you see, it is important because software bugs can be expensive or even dangerous. As Paul Ehrlich puts it, to err is human, but to early foul things up, you need a computer. Okay? Um, let's consider this. No? Consider a scenario where we move a file from folder A and folder B. Here we can think of all the possible ways how we can test this. So these are the testing scenarios that might be available. Okay. Um, Try to move the file when it is open under the scenarios. Under the scenarios are, okay, you do not have a security. Okay, you do not have a security rights to paste the file in a folder B. Okay. The other scenario is the folder B is on the shared drive and storage capacity is full, while the folder B already has a file with it, no? With the same name, or in fact, the list is endless. Okay. Now, suppose that you have 15 input fields to test, each having 5 possible values. The number of combinations will be 5 raised to 15. If you are to test all of the possible combinations, project execution time and cost will risely exponential. Hence, one of the testing principles states that exhaustive testing is not possible. Instead, we need optimal amount of testing based on the risk assessment of the application. And the million dollar question is, how are you going to get to determine this risk? Okay. Um, to answer this, we may do an exercise. Okay. So let me give you a simple question on how are you going to analyze this one. No. So, in your own opinion, which operation is most likely to cause your operating system to fail? Well, among the options, opening a Microsoft Word, B, open an Internet Explorer, and C, opening 10 heavy graphics application in the same time. I am sure that most of you will answer opening 10 heavy graphics application at the same time. So when you are starting this operating system, you will realize that defects are likely to be found in a multitasking project and then needs to be tested thoroughly. So this brings us up the to this slide, defect clustering. Defect clustering states that a small number of modules contain most of the defects detected. By experience, you can identify such risky module, but this approach has its own problem. Okay? If same tests are repeated over and over again, eventually the same test case will no longer find new bugs. This is the another principle called pesticide paradox. The pesticide paradox. Okay, to overcome this, the test case needed to be regularly reviewed and revised, adding new and different test case to help find more defects. But even all of this sweat and hard work in testing, you cannot still claim your software that it is a bug free. To drive all of this point, let us see this video uh, from the public launch of Windows 98. Okay. Alright. Let's plug it in. It's going to say, hey, I see you plugged in a new device, and it's going to load in the appropriate drivers. You'll notice that this scanner build, whoa, moving right along. That must be why we're not shipping Windows 98 yet. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, sir. So there you are. No? You are watching the failure of Microsoft during the public launching of Windows 98. Here you would think that Microsoft would have tested and thoroughly the software thoroughly without risking their reputation, just as you see during their public launch. Okay. Um, and so testing principle. Hence, testing principle states that testing should show presence of defects. As an example, testing reduces the probability of undiscovered defects remaining in the software. But even if it is no defects are found, it is not the proof of correctness or any proof of or a proof that there are no defects remain in the system. Okay, but what if you work an extra hard, taking all precautions to ensure that your systems is 99% bug free, but the software does not meet the requirements of the client. This leads to the next principle, which states that absence of failure is a fallacy. Finding and fixing defects does not help if the system built is unusable and does not fulfill the user needs and requirements. Okay, to fix this, we will moving to our next principle of testing as early testing. Early testing states that that testing should start as early as possible in the software development lifecycle so that any defects in the requirement in the design phase will capture as well. And the last principle is testing is context dependent, which basically means that the way you tested e-commerce website will be very, very different from the way you test of the off-shelf application. Okay, here is the sample recap of our 7 testing principles. Principle 1, testing shows presence of defects. The principle 2, exhaustive testing is impossible. While in the principle 3, the early testing. And principle 4, that will be defect clustering. While in the principle 5, pesticide products. Principle 6, testing is context dependent. And principle 7, absence of error is a policy. Okay. Now, okay, so, okay, we will be moving now to this test case. Okay, what is a test case? Okay, so a test case is a set of action usually written by the quality assurance and testing fed into the software system to determine if the software is working correctly and meets all the requirements. Normally, testing begins whenever your developers finish a system features or set of features. Test cases which to find out test the system are vital because they expose any errors or defects. Okay. So benefits of test case. Okay, so it reduces maintenance cost. It improves software quality. Okay, it is actually a confirmation to meet business requirements. And it takes more satisfied customers. Okay, and it also increases the company profits. Before testing, QA teams must first determine what exactly they need to test and then choose test design. An ideal test case design should be accurate, economical, traceable, repeatable, and reusable. And there are different test cases for different purposes. Okay, so types of test cases includes functionality, test case which reveals of an app's interface work with the system. Okay. Performance test case which confirms the overall effectiveness of the system. Unit test case which analyzes the smallest elements of the software. And security test cases which ensure restricted actions and permissions necessary to protect data. So here is an example of a test case and has been okay and has been okay, and has been I'm going to choose my highlighter first so that we can be able to um, so okay, so in this first column, okay, so here is an example of a test case and it's been written to test the login functionality of the system, okay, which tests the login functionality of the system. In the first column, okay, in the first column, we have the step numbers 1, 2, 3, okay, and one of the test case ID. One is the test case ID. Okay, test case ID. Then in the step call, then in the steps, okay, in the steps column, okay, which is the second column, we have all the steps now, and the third columns of the expected are the columns for the expected results column where we have the expected results for every step. Okay, let us go to step number one. Okay, the step number one. Okay, let us go to the step number one in order to check whether the login functionality, okay, of the application is working correctly or not. What the tester has done is they have written a step, no, a step which enter a valid username and a valid password, and a valid username and a valid password. Okay, so and click on the login button. Okay, so this is an example of a positive test. By positive, well, when I say positive test, I mean that the correct inputs are given into the system and the system has to give the correct output, which is the expectation and exactly what we can see and the expected results. Okay, in the expected results, okay, against the particular step. It says the application should display a home page. Mm. Now, after the first page, after the first step is executed, okay, what the tester now wants is to give the negative inputs. Okay, the negative inputs. Some or all the inputs of going are going to be incorrect, and basically the application should error out and provide some kind of feedback, okay, to the user, saying that the inputs are incorrect and they need to redo their operations and so on and so on and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, there are some problems with this test case. Okay, so there are some problems with this test case. Well, what are the problems? Okay, the problems in the first problem is that there are so many lots of text. Okay, there are lots of text that you can see. A lot of typing has been used to describe what kind of negative inputs in the given is to be given, and there is actually a duplicity, okay, the duplicity, because all of the expected outputs are duplicated, okay. meaning the same expected results is copied from step 2 and the step 3. Okay, and also, if you notice carefully, this does not test all the negative combinations. For example, okay, it does test for valid username and valid password. How about not giving a username and not giving a password and just clicking the button alone? Okay, and that is not covered by the sample. Another example for this is invalid username and invalid password. That means a username does not exist and the application in the data store but the password does. Okay, so these are some of the examples where testers has to compromise, which means um, that some of the testing has been covered in the sense that they have both positive tests and negative tests, but all of the possible combinations which are real users of the application may give, those are not tested over here, and also it takes a lot of time to write because there is a lot of text. Now, here in the revised version, we shall be using legends. Okay, so legends. Okay, we shall be using legends, which says V is valid and I is invalid. Okay, and in the expected result, it says E. Okay, it says E means an error and H means the home page. Okay. So this is actually the revised version of the normal test cases that we are doing in the industry. Okay, so now since that test is focused on I step, okay, okay, one step at a time, which verifies all the combinations. Now, um, too much typing is not any here no too much typing is not anymore required. So if you write test cases like this, you will end up spending much less effort in typing out the text of the test case. So here there are multiple combinations. Okay, so we do have these what we call blank blank, no, and I means invalid, which is if the username is blank and the okay, and the password is invalid. Okay, so the username is blank and V is the password is valid. Invalid username while the password is blank. Okay, so both names, username and the password is invalid. Okay, so the username is valid and no, invalid, and the password is valid. The username is valid while the password is blank. The username is valid and the password is invalid. And here, actually, username and passwords are both valid. Okay, so these are the combinations that, based on the test case, has been cited. As an additional, you can see there are three possible values in the test designs. So, meaning three possible values for the username and three possible values of the password. If we equate these 3 multiplied to 3 will result into 9 possible combinations. So, um, okay, so now if you notice the difference between the two approaches, the first one is the ordinary test case, which took longer time to write, and also the coverage of the test case was not as good as the second test case. The second test case is much faster to write, which requires less effort in typing out the steps and expected results. And for the tester's point of view, it is much easier to understand because instead of text, we are viewing all the test cases point by point. It is also fast to execute because the time of the execution, or at the time of the running of the test case, the tester need not to read a very long sentences, which end up into confusion and misinterpretation of direction at the end, no? In the in the long run. It also it also it is also very easy to update, and since that it is written in the systematic fashion, chances of committing mistakes are less. This is how you write your test cases more effectively and more quickly. I recommend that you use this particular approach to cut down your effort and time on the documentation, because test cases are written before testing is executed in many cases, because it serves as the guide, and also it helps us to aid our references in the long run for the future development. Yeah. Um, so now we will be moving on to this, what we call the demonstration of the automation testing. So by this, I will be presenting a video, no, presenting the on how are we going to make the automation testing using the Selenium, okay, Selenium. So by this, no, I hope that you will be enlightened on how are you going to use the Selenium on your automation testing. So without further ado, I will be presenting this video now.
Alright, so that brings us to our last section, which is hands-on in Selenium. So now that the prerequisites have all been installed and Selenium has been configured for Eclipse IDE, how about we automate and test Gmail using Google Chrome? Well, okay, so this is the test script for it. Let me anyways go and write it down so that we can run our first test script. What will we do? We'll go ahead and first create a package, just like Java goes. So go.edureka dot, let's say, selenium dot demo, right? So let's click on finish. Go ahead and create a class. Let's say I'll name my class demo as well, and I'll make sure there's a main method in it, and click on finish. So here we have our class. Let's go ahead and write the test case. So while I write the code, I'll also be walking you through it. So don't you worry if you don't understand something. We'll all be covering that. So now we have our Java files here and our jar files for Selenium here. But what about the drivers that we added? So these drivers are really important things. They are the ones that can instantiate your browser, which means drivers are necessary if you want to automate your web browsers. So we'll have to type in a command so that our drivers are connected to our program. So the command for it is set property, after which we'll have to tell the command about what driver we are talking about first. We're talking about the web driver that is of Google Chrome. Okay. So once I've done that, let me also go ahead and tell the command where to find it. So I'll have to go and find my Google Chrome driver, which is Chrome driver, copy the location for it. So this is the location of the folder that it is in, but we need the location of the file, so we'll be adding that. So now that we've done that, let us add the name of the file as well, which is Chrome driver, and what is the type of file it is. It is an exe file. So that's it. We've gone ahead and we have successfully connected the driver to our programs. So let us go ahead and create a reference variable for the interface web driver. So I'll name my reference variable driver and assign it an object of the class Chrome driver. Now these interfaces and classes have been provided to us by the Selenium jar files that we added. We just have to import it to our program. So I use a constructor to initialize the reference variable with an object. So now you can see an error here. That's because we've not imported our interface and our classes. So if you hover your mouse over it, you can see an option to import the interface first, and then let's go and import the class as well. We've imported the class as well now. So now let's use our driver to call some methods that will, let's say, open a website for me first. So what website do we want to open? We want to open Gmail. So I'll have to type in that .gmail.com, right? So that is our web page. Now once it has opened the web page for me, I'll ask it to maximize the window that I'll view in my browser in. We can do that by the commands driver.manage.window.maximize. Okay, so let's use our driver and find a web element. Now what is a web element? Well, any component, anything on a web page is a web element. Okay, so in this case, let's say this is the placeholder where I will want my email ID to be. So this is my web element. So let me inspect it. So once I've done that, I can see this web element to have a few attributes here. So that is how we're going to find that web element and send some text to it, which is in my case my email ID. So find element. Once you've done that, we'll also have to tell it how to find the element. So we'll be using the ID name to find the element, which is identifier ID. So let's say by ID, we'll have to tell it the name of the ID as well. And we just saw the name of the ID to be identifier and ID, right? Okay, so once we've done that, we'll also have to tell it what to do once it finds the web element for us. It will send some text to it, which can be done by the command send keys. So what keys do we want to send it? I want to send an email ID, let's say, right? I've sent an email ID to it. Now, once I've entered my email ID, I will like to click on the next button. Let's go and inspect it. Alright, so I can see the class name to be CWAK9. So let me go ahead and find the element by the class name. And the command would be by dot class name. And we'll have to give it the class name as well, which in our case was CWAK9, right? Let's put that in. Now we've done that. So what does it do once it finds it? It'll click on the button, right? So let's tell it to click. We've done that. So all of this should happen automatically. That's the entire purpose of writing the script. So now that I've gone ahead and I've automated some of my browser features, how about I also build a small test case? So let's say I declare a variable of the string type and I name it AT for my reference to actual title and ask my driver to get me the title of the web page that it automatically opened. So get title. So what should our title be actually? I mean, since we are opening Gmail, the title should be Gmail, right? So let me go ahead and create another string variable, name it ET for expected title, and we're expecting it to be Gmail, right? So let me also go ahead and close the browser that I've opened with the driver.close command. Now after that, let me go ahead and use the string variables to establish a test condition. So that can be done best with the if statement. So let's say AT dot equals, I want to ignore cases. I just want the names to be same. So I'll tell it to ignore cases. And so if this happens, if they match, we'll know that our test is successful. So we'll print the same, test successful. And if that does not happen, we know that something went wrong and our test was unsuccessful. So let's print out the same, print ln, and what do we write? We wanted to display test failure, correct? So we have successfully built a test case So let me go ahead and execute it. So my browser opened automatically. It also navigated to Gmail, entered my ID and closed the window. But it happened really fast, so you must not have seen everything. But it says test successful, which means our titles also match. But I would still like to slow the automation down so that you people can actually see everything that happened. So that is also possible. We can do it by thread.sleep. Let's say I'll ask it to sleep for 2000 milliseconds. Similarly, I'll have one more sleep command after we've clicked on the next button. This is not necessary. I mean, normally testing would require you to do it really fast so that in a matter of second, maybe 1,000 cases can be done or more. But I'm doing this so that you people can see everything that happened. Okay, thread requires us to throw an exception, so we did that. Let me now go ahead and run it. Okay, so my browser is open and I have Gmail and my ID typed in with the screen got maximized. I mean the window, and that's it. We also closed the browser and it says test was successful. So congratulations, we just ran our first Selenium test case. Let's go back to the slide. So this was the code that we just ran and our test was a success. So that brings us to the end of our session. Let us finally go over the session in a minute. First, we discussed why you should be using Selenium, because it is free, open source, works on any operating system, any web browser, and lets you code in multiple programming languages. Then we saw what Selenium is, we defined it. It is just an open source tool that can automate almost any browser. Then we went over the versions it has and the suite of tools that it offers. And we also saw how to set Selenium up, the three prerequisites for it. And we finally ran a test case in Selenium. So that's it for today. Thank you so much and happy learning. I hope you
Okay, so that's the end of the video, that demonstration. So what you have seen in the actual demonstration of automation testing done in Selenium using Java interface. Okay, so discuss to you the advantage of the Selenium, using the Selenium. Number one is the flexibility and ease of the use. Selenium is a user-friendly interface for creating and executing testing suites. Selenium's open source nature allows the user to write his own extensions. It is also robust and supports a flexible test architecture. It also allows adding functionalities to the test case easily and customizes the tool according to the project requirement. The second advantage is the platform portability. Testers often have a write multiple test scripts to see to performance of a web application across the different browsers. Selenium allows writing the script once and then run it to the multiple browsers and platforms to test the web applications. This way, even the complex web applications can be tested without expanding the test cycles. The third is the multiple test environments. Selenium allows the testers to use a number of integrated development environments such as NetBeans, Visual Studio, and Eclipse. Features of other frameworks can be also combined with Selenium with a flawless and amusing user experience. Next is the open source. Selenium offers all the advantage that an open source software offers. It doesn't include any license cost and it's customizable as per the user request. However, it is still under development and has an enormous active contributors in the forums. Programming languages. Okay, using the testing tools, testers can write scripts that are specific to programming languages. This requires them to learn a specific language to write scripts. But Selenium allows you to write scripts by using any programming languages. Adding to this, a variety of tools can be used to generate reports, build systems, and create IDE. So everyone, that concludes my report for today about software testing. Now, thank you very much and stay safe, everyone. Have a nice day and God bless you all. Thank you.